All right, Tim, thanks for joining us. You're the school superintendent for the Valley Park School District in the St. Louis area. Thanks so much for being on the podcast today. And I'd love to talk about this whole idea of herding purple cows. But before we do that, I'd love to just get your background and bio.
Yeah, Tom, thanks for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate the opportunity. Simply put, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I'm an educational leader who believes in creating limitless opportunities for the student, staff, and communities that we serve. I've been really fortunate in my career to serve as an educator, a coach, an assistant principal, high school principal in 2 buildings, an assistant superintendent, and now for the last 4 years, proud superintendent of the Valley Park School District.
Wow, that's fantastic. And you've literally done it all through the educational system. I would imagine you even probably cleaned up some throw up in the hallways at some point, right?
I was actually thinking about that driving into work this morning. I don't believe there is a position in the educational system I've not worked at some point in my career. I am a first-generation college student, the proud son of a man who was a maintenance man for the public school system for nearly 30 years. So in college months, I would come back and I would clean the buildings and wax the floors. Throughout my coaching career, I think I've driven the bus. I know during COVID times, I had to substitute as a school or district nurse on many events and occasions. So there's probably not many things that I can't check a box on when it comes to the field of education.
Oh, that's fantastic. And congratulations on being first generation college grad. What does that mean to you?
It means everything to me. My parents, my grandparents always stressed the importance of education and creating a better life, not only for yourself and your family, but doing more good for the greatest amount of people, and always stressed the importance of education. And one of the greatest highlights of my career was when I was principal of St. John Vianney High School. The lead maintenance man at that time was actually my father. So to actually have the opportunity to show up every day as my best self, to truly live out my dream and career, and to do that, knowing that my father was there present, helping to make that all happen, knowing the sacrifices that he and my family had to make to afford me as a first-generation college student an opportunity to achieve these dreams and goals was amazing. But for him to truly see it come to life and live it every day, I'm not sure I can ever place a value on that.
Wow. That's awesome. That's fantastic. You're making the hair on my neck stand up thinking about my own dad. He passed away a few years ago from cancer. But my business partner and I are writing a book right now called The Great Engagement, all about how CEOs and superintendents create exceptional cultures. And the dedication is really to our fathers. It says to our fathers in heaven. Awesome. And one of my notes in it says, if all this book does is make my dad smile, it'll be a success to me. So I know very directly the power of a father in your life. And how is it translated into your desire to want to serve and to lead others?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, growing up the son of a labor worker, right, who cared so much about kids and schools. And he was one of those people, is one of those people that everyone knows him because he shows up at every sporting event, every fine arts production. He knows every kid by name. He says hello to them in the hallways and getting off and on the school buses. So he was much more than a title. And I think growing up, I saw that anyone can have an impact in a child's life. It doesn't have to be a classroom teacher. And I think that's given me a really good lens as a school leader, because I do appreciate the administrative assistants, the custodians, the maintenance workers, the bus drivers. Oftentimes they are the first and the last people that some of our students see, and their impact and their influence can positively impact our students from the moment they see them in the morning until the moment they get off at the end of the day and head on home for a few hours. We've got such a unique opportunity in education to really transform lives, but it really does take all of us to make that possible. And so seeing life through the lens of a classified worker in a school system, I think kind of gave me the work ethic, the values, the character I needed to see the best in others and to understand the importance of everyone's role in this journey.
Talk a little bit more about that work ethic and what is it that you mean by that?
Yeah, I think, sometimes, whether it's intentional or unintentional, I think as we continue to grow as leaders and ultimately matriculate up that professional ladder to various titles and positions and offices, I think it's easy and to become comfortable and to become more removed from the things that are equally as important in the field of education. What I mean by that is, as a leader, I think it's so important to model what you expect of others. And that's not always these big, grand gestures, right? It doesn't always come off in a Board of Education presentation or a state of the community kind of function or event. Each and every day, I try to do the little things that I know my father would do. So when I'm walking the grounds of the campus and I see a piece of trash on the ground, I don't think, well, that's for the maintenance man. I pick it up, even if I see 20 students walk past it or 2 or 3 employees walk past it, because to me, I want to model that, hey, this place of learning is important to us. We all have to take care of it, not just the custodians or the maintenance men. When I'm in a cafeteria, if the different people, the food service workers are busy, I'll happily hop in line and do what I can to ring kids out or get them served faster or move a product from point A to point B or get an extra trash can in the cafeteria because one is overflowing, not because others can't do it, but because I can. And I think that's that mindset of trying to be the best servant leader we can. And while we certainly went into education to better the lives of students, we ultimately get more out of our own personal satisfaction and professional values when we pour into others. And so if by me getting an extra trash can can make that person's day that much easier or that much better, or gives them an opportunity to do something else within the field of education in that moment to help impact a student or another staff member, then I need to model that and be leading the way all along.
It's the essence of true leadership, true servant leadership, that you're willing to put others first and put your ego to the side, and which I think is so valuable and so important for a lot of our listeners out there who are aspiring to become a superintendent or a CEO someday. That it's not about you. If you're doing it right, it's about the people that you have the honor of working with and serving. And clearly you got that message from your dad loud and clear. I've been doing this work for about 7 years now across the country, and the most inspiring leader I've ever met didn't have a single person reporting to her. So she wasn't a quote unquote leader by title, but she was a leader by her energy. And it was a janitor at a public university in the inner city of Detroit. And it was just a great lesson for me of, we can't confuse leadership with a title. Leadership comes from how we behave and how we model, and that work ethic that you talked about. So I just love hearing real life examples like yours and your father's, because I think it's missing out in the workplace right now.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom.
So this purple thing, let's jump into purple cows. Some people have probably heard of that from Seth Godin, and you've taken some of those concepts and applied it to the world of education, I think, in a really fascinating and fun way. So talk to us a little bit about what this whole purple cow thing is.
Yeah, well, it really started when I was principal of St. John Vianney High School. I was really fortunate to be named principal there. Vianney had a long history in the greater St. Louis area of being a school that others looked to as being an example of not only the educational value, but truly creating men of character and accomplishment. And yet, like a lot of schools, not only in the greater St. Louis area, but across the country, had kind of become very comfortable with who they are and some of the things that they were doing. And because of that, there were some challenges when we first got there. Academic outcomes weren't necessarily where we had hoped they would be. Enrollment, like a lot of places, was on a decline. We hadn't had an infusion of many facility improvements to kind of keep up with the modern educational setting. And what I noticed after being there about a year was some of our very best educators, our most experienced, our brightest, the ones that were so committed to the mission, vision, and values of the school, they were the ones that were starting to look over the fence into another pasture about should I be somewhere else? Is it time to maybe move on from Vianney to a different career field, different school district, et cetera? And I thought to myself, wow, if we lost not only this institutional knowledge, but all this passion, all this compassion that these educators have, what's going to happen in our school district? And that's not going to help us get better. That's going to be an even greater challenge that we're going to have to come. And so rather than focusing so much on recruitment of new talent, I really tried to change my mindset to focus on, okay, how do we retain the best talent that we already have here, and ultimately create an environment of excellence and a culture of excellence that will continue to attract new talent then to work with these amazing individuals that we know already exist within our field. And so after reading Seth's book, I think it was just the right timing in my life, personally and professionally. I did what I do with a lot of business books and other books from other fields. I tried to apply a lens of education to it, and how I could make some of these practices that he talked about, how to make our school stand out, how to make our teachers stand out, our students stand out, what remarkable things and innovative things could we do? And ultimately what I kept coming down to after reading that book and then applying all the studies about employee retention and engagement and everything else, decided before we could focus on programs, we had to focus our energy on creating a positive culture for the people that we serve. And so for us, we kind of developed the acronym of PURPLE: passionate, united, resilient people leading education. And those became our purple cows. We ultimately identified and created a profile of what a purple cow was in our school system, which ultimately was our very best and brightest and most committed educators. And then from there, we really tried to be intentional about creating a culture of excellence for them. And then ultimately an environment where others would want to come and be part of our pasture, so to speak, as well.
That's great. I love that. I love the right of the gate there. Passionate's the very first word. So talk a little bit about, what that means and how do you bring that to life? Because it's easy to say, right? It's easy to have these easy to remember sort of things like purple, but how do you actually bring it to life?
Yeah, and I think that ultimately it does start with leadership. And I say that with a caveat. I think too often in not only school systems, but really all organizational settings, too much emphasis is placed on leadership. Too much emphasis is placed on human resources as being the owners or being responsible for culture. However, certainly we cannot expect of others what we're not willing to give and model and live ourselves. So that's really important. So additionally, we had to really, obviously, one, develop the mindset that culture was important to us, people was important to us, which quite honestly, that's the easy part. Many people can get behind something like that, right? But then we had to really kind of decide what that means. And so for me, what that meant, not only for me, but my educators, was to really stand out. We don't want to be good. We want to be great. And we need to care. We need to engage. We need to inspire. And we need to play every day. And so we really kind of focus really on 6 principles of participation, personally thanking others, personalizing the experience, publicly praising people, promoting the great works going on in our school system, and then ultimately professional development or professional growth. Those were kind of became our 6 P's of how we were going to not only attract, but retain and develop our purple cows in our system.
And this idea of the 6 principles, is that something that you guys came up with yourselves as an extension of the purple, or where did that come from?
Yeah, yes and no. In part, it came from just really engaging in conversation, purposeful conversation with those that we had already identified within our system as purple cows. And so what we did, we leaned into the conversations. We did stay interviews, and we said to them, Tom, why do you keep coming to our school every day? What excites you most? When your feet hit the ground in the morning, what are you most excited about doing, seeing, living as part of your work? We also asked them the opposite of that. What would, when your feet hit the ground this morning, make you say, is this the right place for me? Question if you should look to another pasture for a career change or a placement change at this time in your life career, why do you keep coming here? And they talked about that personalization part. They talked about being seen as people. They talked about things that we know are critical, and not only in education, but all career fields, the relationship aspect. They talked about it without ever saying our mission, our vision, our values. They talked about developing men of character and accomplishment. They talked about making a difference in the life of others. And so a lot of these things came organically from those conversations, that not only do they love participating in events, whether it's coaching or leading a club or volunteerism and service, but boy, they felt more engaged. They felt more acknowledged when the people that they report to participate in those things. And it was a value add. They talked about not the big grandiose gestures and award ceremonies when it came to actually acknowledging their work, but the small personalization that takes place on a day-to-day, stopping in the hallway and telling Tom what a great job he did on that history lesson, or seeing Carrie in the lunchroom interacting with kids on her lunch period and really getting to know them on a personal level, and stopping her briefly for 10 or 15 seconds on the way out to acknowledge the relationship she was building. And they talked about, while it's nice to have that intimate personalization, of course, if we want to continue to attract others, and recognizing that some people do value that personal praise more, how could we do that on a larger scale? And that's where we really started to incorporate not only that praise into our bigger award ceremonies like Teacher of the Year and different awards throughout the month, but leveraging the tools of social media so that our parents knew what great educators were supporting their kids, so that if you were a prospective applicant, that you could see all these great people and the innovative and personalized things they were doing with students to possibly get you to consider joining our team. And we really just tried to start leveraging the tools a little bit more to get the message out of, wow, this is a great place to work, and here's who you're going to be working with if you decide to join this community.
Mm. And as the superintendent, Tim, I'm curious, which of those is the most challenging for you to bring to life, for yourself?
Yeah, I think for me, it's just constantly realizing just how personal everything we do on a day-to-day basis is. Sometimes in education, certainly as an educational leader, we rightfully get caught up in developing systems and processes, and we think about the larger scope of our work, whether that's a facilities master plan or a strategic plan, and we get really high level because that's what our role charges us with doing, right? Organizational change is a high level systems thinking role. But at its heart, to really be successful, we really have to get down to the very smallest detail of the people that this is impacting and the people that are going to have to do the heavy lifting of the work. And so just making sure that I'm constantly acknowledging, constantly valuing the work that's done every day. And that doesn't always mean it's a new curriculum document. It doesn't mean it's this great professional development that our assistant superintendent or a teacher leader has developed. It truly is in the minute to minute and day by day aspects that every one of our staff members does to make this a great place to work.
And I would imagine with that focus that you're intentional about doing that in a maybe daily or weekly way. What are some of the things that you do to keep that alive for yourself?
Yeah, I have some expectations that I try to hold myself to, and I ask my leadership team to hold me to as well, and hopefully model in their day-to-day aspects, right? So some of those include making sure I'm intentional about practicing joy and gratitude each and every day. That can be really difficult when you're a school or district leader, particularly coming out of some of the difficult things we did with the pandemic. There was a lot of negativity swirling in our country, but specifically in the world of education. But I noticed, not even on an educational or professional level, but just on a personal level, my social emotional health, my physical health and well-being is so much different when I think about what I'm grateful for and then I look for ways to make others happy or infuse joy into them, right? Some of the best days of my life are when I'm actually standing out each morning, waiting for kids to get off the bus and just getting high fives and fist bumps and saying hello. I love being at sporting events and fine arts productions and seeing our students display their great work. And that's where I find value and I find joy. That's what keeps my fire going. And so I really try to practice that each day. The other things, I try to be present. I try to act with integrity, speak honestly, and always do the right thing. Right. And ultimately, I want to make sure that each person, whether it's a student in our pre-K all the way up to a graduate, or if it's one of our employees or someone here in the central office, when they go home each day, I hope they say, regardless of what they think about my policies, my practices, some of the difficult decisions we have to make, man, he treated me with respect. He saw me today when he saw me, right? Not like, just kind of acknowledged for the head nod, but like I could tell that Tim saw me as a person. I could tell that he respects me as a person. And I know whether that interaction was 10 seconds or 10 minutes, that he values the work I'm doing in this school district.
Yeah, just being seen. I've always said that great leaders listen the greatness out of their people. And a lot of that is what you said, just being seen, just knowing that our leader, our boss, the superintendent, actually sees us as a human being is a huge part of the work, right? It's so simple.
That's
so
right.
simple, and yet we get overly busy, and so we don't have time to do that stuff. At least that's what we tell ourselves as leaders.
Yeah, and I think a key to that, Tom, that I found is quite honestly being intentional and scheduling time. It's amazing how we always, and I'm guilty of this as much as anyone else, we always revert to, I don't have enough time, or I'll get to it tomorrow. And I think we do that with a lot of our things in our lives, both personally and professionally. And so what I have tried to become more intentional about is, rather than my calendar being a weapon of taking away my time and managing my time, really using it to be intentional with my time. So I block out periods to write thank you notes to my employees, notes of congratulations to my students, notes of thanks to our community and business leaders who participate to help make our limitless learning community a possibility. I block out times to get into classrooms and lunchrooms. I never have opportunities on my schedule that will take me away from bus duty in the morning, because I want to see the faces and I want to be reminded first thing in the morning, who are we here to serve? Who are we trying to create limitless opportunities for? Whose lives are we transforming today? And barring a crisis, I'm out there each day for that very reason. Not because I collect any data, right, about students socially, emotionally, or academically. Not because I'm asking them, hey, how's that new curriculum working out? Or are you ready for that state assessment? No, I want to be reminded of our why, though. And those whys get on and off our school bus each and every day and really grounds me in my work. And so really being intentional and leveraging my calendar to create opportunities to develop a culture of excellence is something I have really grown and adapted to over the years.
It's so great. Let the calendar serve you, not vice versa, right? And
That's right.
We get so busy. I just learned recently, because I realized I've been saying that a lot lately. Well, lately, the last several years. And when people ask me how I'm doing, and I started to do some research, I found out that busy actually comes from an old Dutch word meaning bezieg, which roughly approximates anxiety, which is fascinating. You think about it, right? If you were to replace the word busy with how are you doing? Well, I'm very anxious, right? We wouldn't say that, but that is in essence what we're saying. It's almost this point of pride in our culture of being busy, being, under the surface sort of anxious. And so I was talking to some leaders yesterday, some CEOs and superintendents that we convene once a month from across the country. And one of them said something that really struck me. She said, I've been trying to say that my life is full. It's full in exactly the ways that I want it to be, and in beautiful ways. And, not always, but 90% of the time, I am as full as I need to be. And there's 10% of the time where I've got to do stuff or things happen that I don't obviously want to happen, but that's just part of life. And I just love that visual of how do we be more intentional about having full and valuable lives as opposed to reactive with quote unquote busy lives.
I actually kind of grabbed greatness from one of my mentors in my doctoral program many years ago. He described it as prioritizing your purpose. And what he recommended, this was long before I ever became a superintendent, and now I continue to spread this message to students that I teach in graduate programs who are aspiring to be principals or superintendents themselves. But what he said was, one of the things he learned very quickly when he became a principal or superintendent was, you have to be intentional about prioritizing your purpose. And he meant that on a personal level. And so what he recommended to all of us was, whatever our means were and whatever our interests were, find time for your family, find time for your friends, but don't talk about it, prioritize it. And so what he would say is, for him and his wife, the arts were really important, and going to the theater was something that they prioritized. Well, a lot of people would say, you know what, we should go to the theater. We should go to dinner. We should go to movies or a ball game together, right? And we know we should find time for those that care about us. And yet we always end up, we should. We very seldom act upon it. And so what he recommended was, buy the tickets, right? If those are season tickets and you can afford those, buy the season tickets. If they're movie tickets, buy them today. Because once you make that purchase and that investment of something that's purposeful and important to you, you're more likely to go, right? You're committed now, you're invested, you've expended the dollars, it's on your calendar, you and your significant others or friends are making those plans. And so I have done that in my personal life. And again, that's when I find my most joy personally. But I basically took that same principle and tried to make it applicable to my professional life. And so if I say people are important, if I say my purpose are the students and the staff and the community that I serve, how does that show up in my daily work? More specifically, on a minute detail, how does that show up on my calendar? Can I identify on April 6th where I'm doing that, what that looks like, where I made my purpose a priority? And that's just something that stuck with me for many years.
I love that. Prioritize your purpose. Yeah. You got to put on your schedule, right? We would never miss a meeting with a parent or with a teacher, right? If we schedule something, and yet we'll do it all the time. We'll have a personal appointment that we'll just blow off, and we've got to treat it like it's a regular meeting that has not just as important but more important. You know, why would we possibly have an excuse for missing something that's, you know, to your point, personalized and personal around your purpose? So
yeah, and I think, Tom, you know, I'm a former English teacher, right? So alliteration is important to me, but sticking on that principles of the P's that we've been on, you know, to me, we've talked about priorities, we've talked about personalization, but maybe the thing that all of us in education, particularly leaders, need to think about is also permission. And what I mean by that is, we need to give ourselves permission. We are not titles. We are not robots, right? We are not locked and loaded to the positions that we serve. We are people, and we need to give ourselves permission sometimes to do what's right for us and the other people that we care about. Obviously, there's people we care about professionally, but there are obviously people in our lives personally that make our profession possible. And we need to give ourselves permission to go to our child's theater event, go to our daughter's soccer game, take our spouse or significant partner out to a dinner and an event. I think somewhere in education, all of us, classroom teachers, classified workers, school leaders, we beat ourselves up about not being present at our work, that we've started to lose a little bit of ourselves personally. So we need to give ourselves permission to prioritize our purpose, not only professionally, but personally as well.
I love that. You really do love alliteration.
I do.
So we're out of time here, which is always the case. It flies by when we're having fun. So maybe you could wrap up with a book recommendation for the audience.
Absolutely. There's so many great texts that I have learned from over my career professionally. One of those is Liz Wiseman's book, Multipliers: How the Best Leaders Make Everyone Smarter. Ultimately, I think, regardless of our title and our role in education, that's what our charge is to become a multiplier. It's not enough for me to be the best version of myself. It's not enough for you to be the best version of yourself. We're ultimately looking for that ripple effect. So if I can make one person's life 1% better today, man, that's a significant difference. You calculate that over a school year of nearly 200 days, that's over 200 people's lives that I've impacted today. And we know that those people ultimately are going to go out and stack up on that and make a difference in a person's life today or tomorrow. And so I may never know that. I don't know the different ripple effects. I don't know how deep it goes or how far out the spread and ripple takes place. But if I can have that mindset each and every day of investing in others, pouring into others and making them better, wow, that's how we make a difference. It's that 1% continuous improvement day after day. And so I would encourage all of you to check out Liz's book, Multipliers. I know she has a new one out right now. I can't quote it because I haven't had the opportunity to dig into it yet, but I'm certain I'll find some nuggets of wisdom in there and grab that greatness as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you again, Tim, for the time. I appreciate it, and have a blessed rest of your week.
Tom, thanks so much for the opportunity.